Welcome, everybody. I'm super excited to have Gene here with us today. Gene, for those who don't know you, give us a brief introduction.
Hey, Ryan, thanks so much. It's so great to be on your podcast. Yes, my name is Gene Norman, and for over 25 years, I was a broadcast meteorologist. I've worked in Houston, Atlanta, Birmingham, and still do some freelance work here in Atlanta. And we started exhibiting at SECO and other manufactured housing conferences back in 2018 when the company I now work for, Hazard Call, began introducing their instant messaging and weather alerting solution. And we've really found a home in the manufactured housing space. We're really excited about that. But more importantly, was all the relationships and contacts that we begin to make in manufactured housing, and specifically at SECO. And that's one of the things I'm excited to talk about today is the upcoming SECO 21. In fact, we've been so involved that I was flattered when they asked me, would you be willing to help us promote SECO? This is the organizing committee. And so it's kind of unusual, I suppose, Ryan, for a vendor to be put in that situation. But I think it speaks to the nature of the people who run SECO and our relationship with them.
I think the fascinating thing about our space, and we were talking about this before I hit record, that mobile home park owners, it's like a fraternity, sorority type. We're here to help each other. And you just don't get that in like anything else. I mean, I can imagine how competitive it must have been for you to be a meteorologist. I'm sure when you saw this space for the first time, your mind was blown at how collaborative it is.
Exactly. And that is one of the things that really impressed me when we started to exhibit, because we've been to a bunch of different shows. I'm not going to name them specifically, but at some of the other shows, you're just there, you know, and people are walking by and you may never see them again. At SECO, though, it's a different experience. And it's kind of hard to explain unless you actually attend a conference and interact. Because in a professional organization, a lot of times there are lots of goals, lots of reasons why the organization exists. But SECO's core, mission statement is it is by owners for owners. And that's kind of unique. You might be involved in a professional endeavor where you get involved and you pay your membership dues or whatever, and you may or may not hear from people, but it's not like that at SECO. And the fact that they're willing to help each other. I mean, one of the organizers, David Roden, said to me, when I first got into this, I really didn't know what I was doing. And I was really surprised there were a lot of people willing to help. And we all kind of got together and we started helping each other. Not because you're going to benefit directly from it, but because you want to really help. You want to see this whole concept of manufactured housing advance. You want to tear down some of the negative stereotypes and stigmas that are around manufactured housing. And you want to see what you can do to improve the communities where these people live. And that's kind of refreshing and a little bit different, I got to say.
Yeah, and like we were mentioning earlier, SECO is a non-for-profit. It is meant by its very nature to be helpful. And my listeners to this podcast know that I don't sell anything on this podcast. I'm not trying to monetize it or get deals or raise money. I am doing this because I want good would-be entrepreneurs to get off the sidelines and into the game. And the best way to get the right people into this space is by literally giving them tools for free. And that's why I love SECO and why everybody listening in needs to find their way there. There are people like Gene, like myself, like David, Spencer. We are actively trying to help you. Like we are, because we want what's best for this space. That's what it's about. We're not here trying to sell something. We're here trying to literally welcome in more people to this space so we can all help each other, so we can bust open this stigma of trailer parks. No, these are legitimate communities where people wave at each other, where people help each other out, where you don't get angry when someone knocks on your door. Like, who is knocking on my door right now? No, you get excited, you jump off the couch and you run over and see who the company is. There's just not many places where that sense of community is anymore. And it starts at the top with people like David and Spencer and everyone at SECO. So proud to have you on here to talk a little bit more about it. Gene, The number one objection that I get for attending SECO this year is, listen, it's all virtual. There's magic in face-to-face conversations that just get lost. Why is that the wrong way to look at it?
Well, I think, Ryan, the way that people should be looking at it is you now have more flexibility and freedom than you would in an in-person conference. And you may say to yourself, well, how's that possible? Well, for one thing, you're not getting in a car, driving to the airport, dealing with that 4-hour hassle or however long it is to get from point A to point B, check into a hotel with all the issues that go around that. And then eventually making your way to the conference. I know sometimes after I take a trip like that, the last thing I want to do is go to the session. I just want to sit in the room and just decompress. You're at your home environment or whatever environment you're comfortable in, and you're able to easily navigate to where you want to go. The platform this year called Welcome, first of all, the name, that tells you a lot, right? As opposed to, a difficult to pronounce name. Welcome is just that. It makes you feel welcome, makes it easy to navigate around. Plus, you're able to do more picking and choosing for where you want to go and how you want to interact with other people who are attending the conference. So there's a lot of convenience with the online platform. And sometimes you may just have to stop and think about it for a minute before you just go, I don't want to do that.
Listen, if you want mobile home parks, if you are a competitive person, you want to win, it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. And there is no better way to add rocket fuel to your network than to attend a conference. And the unique advantage about what happened last year and what was going to happen again this year is that, just like you said, it is way more efficient from a time standpoint and from a financial standpoint, because the all-in cost is dramatically less.
Yep.
So I love hearing that. Probably the next big objection I hear is, well, I went to last year's, or I have concerns about the ease of use of this platform. What would you say to anyone who's a little hesitant around, well, is it going to be cumbersome or is it going to be seamless?
Right. So there were a lot of challenges last year, mainly because people were not really used to doing that. I would say a couple of things have happened since then. We've spent 18 months now, a lot of us doing these kinds of computer conference calls. This platform is a lot easier to navigate. It's almost like you're walking through an exhibit hall, walking through to these little conference meeting rooms. So that will make it easier to navigate. I also understand there are easier tools to communicate. And so that should make it an overall more simple process. Last year, you had to watch 4 or 5 videos to understand how to do A, B, C, D. This year, it's a lot easier with a lot more on-screen assistance to just navigate things in a smoother manner. So I wouldn't let the technology, what you think of as a barrier, deter you, because it will be a lot easier to do what you need to do.
I couldn't agree more. And also, if you want to win, you're going to find a way. It's like, it wouldn't matter if it was online or in person. If you are expecting people to come to you and life to just hand you things, you will be disappointed. Yeah. The thing about I remember the first SECO I ever went to in 2017, I went to every single booth there. And if no one was at the booth, I came back. I made it a point to go to every single booth. I had a mountain of business cards. And I said, I'm going to build my network myself. No one came up to me. At least not to the degree that I went up to approach people. That is the mindset you have to have. And the really cool thing about it being virtual is you got a big giant master list of everyone. And if you really want it, you can go out and you can find these people and you can meet these people. So in kind of a weird way, it actually is a lot more efficient, which makes me really excited. Gene, I want to pivot a little bit. So the numbers coming out of SECO as of late August are that we're actually trending on having more people than last year. And last year we had over 600 attend?
Over 600, yeah. And see, that's the other thing, Ryan, that people may not be appreciating. When you're in person here in the Atlanta area, which is where it was for several years prior to last year, you might be able to interact with people who are in your region. In fact, the logo changed. I don't know if you realize this. It used to just show Southeast United States, basically whatever the same states are that comprise the SEC conference, right? The SEC football conference. So because of its virtual nature, now you have the entire country. And now the logo encircles the whole US. And we were able to, interact with people in other parts of the country who'd never heard of our service. And they were like, oh, well, I didn't know about that. And in the same way, you can leverage the resources of people who may not live where you live. And that's a great thing. It's almost like the internet, right? I mean, we're all learning about things from different people halfway across the world in some cases that we might not have known otherwise, simply because we have that online access.
You said something earlier I want to come back to, which is that I've been to tons of conferences, and to me, what makes SECO so special is that there's not a lot of these like private equity knuckleheads who their head is as big as a football field with the egos. And I think what's really special about SECO is it just has a way of attracting people like you and I, Gene, who genuinely speaking love helping people. We do it just because. Like we were joking before we even hit record, as if I didn't have enough on my to-do list. Now we've got all this planning stuff and meetings are running over. And why are we doing it? Because neither of us are getting paid and neither of us are promoting any products or anything like that. We're doing this because we genuinely speaking love this space. We want what's best for it. And we want to provide people with the ability to meet people like us. We want to find people like us and we want to prop them up. So to me, you're not going to have an overwhelming amount of the corporate types or these hoity-toity knuckleheads. You're going to have people like us. There's going to be thousands and thousands and thousands of lots in collective ownership, and about every major vendor you'll need. Maybe you don't need them immediately, but at some point in time, you will be glad you have that business card of whatever vendor or lender or broker or fellow mobile home park owner. And again, it's a much warmer reception at SECO than it's been, in my opinion, in some of the other conferences. So the magic is not gone.
No. And in many ways, as far as an attendee, you can create your own experience and you can determine that to a certain extent. And even if you're a vendor like, we're looking at new ways to interact with people who might come by to visit us. So there's lots of flexibility that sometimes, the physical is great, and it's great to, shake someone's hand, give them a hug, etc. But we're going to be able to do that in a different way because the schedule is chock full of great speakers, great topics. We're going to be talking about the impact of COVID, the impact of legislation, the impact of some of these new financing opportunities that people have. So there's lots of great topics, and the three things that we want you to come away from by attending SECO is you're going to be able to learn things you didn't know. You're going to hear from people who do what you do. You're going to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? And I think that's also unique. Are you willing to share your warts with everybody else? I've been in some of these workshops where you hear some of the stories and you're like, wow, that person is really brave to get up and say what happened to them. Wasn't the most positive thing, but what they learned about it, how they were able to recover, and how that lesson could help you from making a mistake. And you think about that, Ryan, are you attending conferences in general with whatever you might be involved in where people are willing to tell you, hey, I screwed up. I want to keep you from screwing up? I don't think that happens a lot.
It's not. And that's the spirit of mobile home parks in real life. This podcast is all about me telling you all my flaws and stupid things that I've done so you don't have to do them. And you hit on a really good topic that I actually did not plan to talk about, but you're right. It's more than you go to these conferences primarily to build that network, but also there's a plethora of information out there. We're going to talk about why people are paying super low cap rates so you can be more competitive in smarter markets. We're going to talk about things like you said, COVID, legal risks, marketing strategies, financing mobile home parks, and where the financing markets are at and where they are going. I mean, we're going to have so many different types of ways that you can get more educated on this space, but also we're going to bring back Manager Monday, which I'm really excited about. Can you spend a minute or two talking about that?
Well, Manager Monday is going to be talking about effective marketing, the use of social media. That's so important. I mean, if you have any kind of business, you have to know about that. Website optimization, dealing with problem residents. Okay, right? Everyone would love to have people who pay on time and who never have a problem in their yard or on their property, but you have to deal with the problems. And again, we're talking about the warts, right? So you have to be able to know how to do that, get some good practical tips, advice, and resources, as well as understand what to do with the ADA compliance and service animals. Now, I don't have all the details on this, and maybe it's not, podcastable, but I heard on today's planning call that they're trying to work with a company that somehow can trace the DNA of pets so that when we have to clean up after them, we can tell whose pet that was. And I heard that, it blew my mind. It's like, really? Really? You could do that? Okay. So
I'll let someone else take stool samples, but yes, that was hysterical. Well, I remember a bunch of years ago, I found out about dog bite insurance at SECO, which is really fascinating because the big reason a lot of insurance companies don't want big dogs is because of the liability of a bite or a scratch or whatever. So having that in my back pocket has been incredible. I mean, the little nuggets from things like that are just absolutely, you can't put a price on them.
No. So, these are the great things. And again, that Manager Monday is for the manager. Yep. Someone who's got to deal with these real life problems. And again, they hear the good, the bad, the ugly, what they can do to avoid a problem, resources they can leverage that they may not have known about. And hear the success stories. A lot of times it's good to hear the good news. Hey, this industry is vibrant. This industry is going to keep going despite everything else crazy that's going on in the world. We're going to figure it out. Here are some things that worked. So sometimes you need some encouragement. You need to hear, it's difficult, but it can be done. Here's what you can do. And here's how I did it. So I'm really excited about that.
It's pretty darn exciting. Yeah. To think that I'm going to be welcoming my own employees to get an education too. So it's not just that I'm going to be out hustling hard, trying to meet everybody too. There's going to be some awesome things, like I said, from developing mobile home parks to adding an RV component to breaking down cap rates. There's even stuff in how to optimize what you already have and welcome in your property managers into the process too, so they can learn something. The magic of SECO is that the people at the top, David, Spencer, they've welcomed people like you and I, Gene, who've expressed a very strong interest in helping others and making what's best for this space. And it trickles down from there all the way through even the vendors, obviously the attendees too. So doesn't matter that it's online or in person. The magic is there. It's always been there. And I am going to fight to keep it there as long as we have people who really, truly care about this space.
Exactly. And again, there are going to be sessions that are focused on the technology, on the finances, on some of the legal issues. So, being aware of all these things, understanding from people who, again, do this for a living. It's not some theory. It's not some guy who wrote a paper and has never, run a park. These are people who know what they're talking about. And that's who you want to hear from. You want to hear from somebody who's got the goods, as they say. Or I don't know, do they still say that?
I still say that. So if it's dorky, then I'll be the wart to say, hey, look at this right here. Funny that you bring that up. Oh, and don't forget too, because this is online, everything is recorded. So if you miss a session, you can watch it afterwards. And
I was just about to mention that. Yeah, because when you look at the program, you're going to see 3 things going on at once. You go, well, but I want to do that and that. Well, you can.
I remember I interviewed Mike Conlon last year, and Andrew Keel's infill session were at the same time. And I think Ian Tudor, my business partner, had a whole panel on some of the top people that own tens of thousands of lots, going in depth into how to conduct due diligence from a high level, all at the same time. But because it's online and it's recorded, you can even get access to last year's recordings too. So yeah, all for basically the same price as a normal admission ticket would be. Sans hotel, sans traveling at your leisure from home, way more efficient. Listeners, if you want to win, this is how you do it. You go out, you find a way, you don't use an excuse, you find a way to win. People like Gene and I and Spencer and everybody on the planning committee, we want to see you win. Join us.
Right. And we want to see you there. We're going to have a virtual happy hour. There's going to be all kinds of other things. Some of the large vendors are going to be having fireside chats. So there's going to be great opportunities for you to get the information you need. And again, as Ryan just said, even if you're not able to attend every little thing, you can listen to it afterwards. So that's also a great part of the freedom and flexibility that I mentioned at the beginning.
Gene, thank you so much for coming on my podcast to talk about this. While you're here, we literally have a meteorologist with us. What tidbits do you have about our space, having just seen the crazy weather patterns that we experience?
Well, you know, as a meteorologist, I always say, just when you think you've seen it all, think again. So we never thought we'd see X, like the hurricane season we had last year, and perhaps the one that we're about to see unfolding this year. We're about to hit the peak of the season. We just had a big storm hit the Northeast. And again, the big problem there was flooding. A lot of people underestimate the threat that flooding brings. And in our warmer atmosphere, we're seeing more heavy rainfall events. So it's not just, oh, it's raining. No, oh, it's pouring. It's flooding. Oh, my goodness. And so, you know, unfortunately, this space has a stigma, which is unfounded, of course. You know, you and I know this. They don't attract storms. They don't attract tornadoes. In fact, a well-anchored home can withstand a storm just as good as a site-built home. And unfortunately, as having been involved in television news, I can tell you that, yeah, if there's bad weather, let's say, hey, go to the trailer park and look for the tipped over trailer.
Oh, no,
all right? But they don't. Right next to it could be a site-built home with damage to the roof.
Right.
They don't want to take a picture of that because it's not as sexy as the rolled over trailer.
Right.
Well, was a rollover trailer secured? Okay. And a lot of times the answer is no. So of course it's going to get blown over. And that's just the nature of things, right? I mean, you put a 70-mile-an-hour wind against a building that's not anchored to the ground, it's going to tip over. Okay.
So brings up a really relevant follow-up question, which is what types of things can fellow mobile home park owners do to hopefully, when an inevitable bad storm comes through, what types of things should we be thinking about? Obviously, making sure mobile homes are tied down properly. Yeah.
But also making sure that residents have a way to know when the weather's coming. So many times as a meteorologist, it's so frustrating for me to hear after a storm, we had no idea it was coming. And I just kind of scratch my head. Are you kidding me? In 2020 and 2021 and whatever year it is, with all of the access that we have with these devices and, you know, everything else that's going on, you have to kind of live in a turtle shell to not know that things are happening. The challenge, Ryan, is that people don't perceive the weather threat to them because they hear about something and they say, well, that's not going to happen to me. The first thing that happens is everyone goes into a state of denial, right? They say it's not going to happen to me. But a good park owner should have a plan, okay? And the plan is it's like a three-legged stool. What am I going to do before? What am I going to do during? What am I going to do after? Before this storm hits, do I have a place where people can go? Do I have a way for them to know that this could be bad? During the storm, what am I going to do? How can I prepare? How can I prevent as much damage as possible? Okay. Can I remind people, as we encourage folks along the coast, tie down things that might get blown around by hurricane force winds, and a lot of times people just overlook these basic things, right? And then afterwards, what are my recovery steps? How am I going to let people know it's safe to come back, or the power will be restored by a certain amount of time, so on and so forth. So we help communities all across the country, get that information and figure out a way to communicate with their residents. But whether you use our service or not, as a meteorologist, I am concerned about public safety. I've been doing this for over 25 years on television and now in this private sector role. But I want to make sure that people know, I don't ever want to hear, if I could live my life and at the end of it say, Gene, they've eradicated people coming on TV saying, we didn't know it was coming, then I would feel like this was all for a good purpose, okay? But we got a long way to go. People live in a state of denial. They don't understand the information that they receive. That's a big problem. People get confused. We use the same word. Well, we use the same two letters to begin words about weather threats that have two very different meanings: watch and warning. We call it the wah-wah problem, because a watch and a warning mean two different things. I don't know how many times people have said it the wrong way, meaning one or the other, and then taking the wrong action. So that's a problem. And then people need to understand, okay, if I live in a vulnerable area, where am I going to go? When I covered hurricanes, I lived in Houston, we would tell people, get away from the coast, go evacuate. Well, if we know that there's going to be a widespread outbreak of tornadoes, where are they going to go? So do you have a thought? We have some very proactive community managers, owners who have provided shelters. I've seen them. When I went to Oklahoma in 2-degree weather in January of 2018 to see my first mobile home experience for the first time, the owner was proud to show me, here's our shelter. When we know that there's bad weather, we open it up and we tell people, here's where you're going to go. Everyone doesn't do that. Everyone doesn't have the ability to pay for that and create that experience. But what can you create? What can you do? Work with your local authorities. Try to figure out what kind of partnerships you can work out with churches or other structures that are sturdy. And you can tell people this is where you should go. So those are the things that, really speak to this constituency, your listeners and people involved in manufactured housing. Is, I know you don't want to think about it. I know you want to pretend like it's not going to happen. A storm is going to come. And unfortunately, storms that, leave a lasting impact, that's what people remember for years afterwards. So do whatever you can to prepare and protect as many people as possible.
I love hearing all of that. So I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina, and Hurricane Hugo had a very lasting effect on us, so much so that the Charlotte Hornets mascot is literally named Hugo. And we had things like the Hugo's Diner. And I was in Tallahassee at our property in 2018 when that massive storm basically wiped out Mexico Beach and Panama City.
Hurricane Michael. Mm-hmm.
Hurricane Michael, it devastated. And thankfully we lost one home. One home got pretty severely damaged, but we worked out a deal with the guy. So he didn't, it wasn't the end of the world, thankfully. So we got incredibly lucky. But I remember we had to rush around thankfully we had a tree cutter ready to go before the storm even hit. And we must have saved, I would guess, at least 5 more homes, because trees were hanging on with not a lot of left to the imagination, keeping it sturdy. And a lot of angry phone calls, by the way, because it just took forever to get all these trees down. And I remember, Gene, I left probably 4 days before the hurricane hit. And on the day that we left, we went around, this was 199 units, and we knocked on every single door. We tagged, divide and conquer, if you will. Mm-hmm. And we knocked on every single door. We counted about 60 families who hadn't left 4 days before. Yeah. And we asked in so many words, what are you doing here? And it was jaw-dropping hearing all sorts of things from like, look, I live paycheck to paycheck. I have no choice. I can't just go get a hotel somewhere. I don't
Right.
have family I can go and stay with. A lot of folks, they don't even have reliable transportation. So they're like, what am I going to do? I don't have money. I'm on fixed income. I have $900 a month coming in. So what am I going to do? Go and jump on a bus and then go find a hotel? I don't have any funds. And then to what you just brought up right there, Gene, I don't have a plan. And that was incredible. We were incredibly lucky that it hit a little bit to the west of us, because it could have been a nightmare for our community, and it was a nightmare for Mexico Beach and Panama City Beach. And I think it all comes down to this: you've got to have a plan, and then you have to be understanding of the fact that we deal with affordable housing. What does that mean? Gene, if something happened in one of your city, in Atlanta or Charlotte with me, we've got family we can go stay with. We've got a hotel you can go and get in the mountains, way away from everything. We can get away. A lot of these folks can't. And it's great to hear you coming from meteorology to where you're at now. Your passion for keeping people safe has not gone away. I love hearing that. And yeah, I mean, I just realized that a few years ago, you have to have a plan for these folks who
Right.
do not have the means in a lot of cases to find somewhere safe. So I love hearing you say that.
Yeah, and you know, there's all kinds of different possible solutions, but it all starts with, you know, what is the plan? And I think if you start from there, what are the threats we're exposed to? What is the plan that we can actually implement to get these folks safe? And then at the same time, I mean, you have to understand that you can do the best you can. And that may be all you can do, because when you're talking about a storm category 5, which is the highest, you know, level of category of hurricane, you know, there's only so much you can do. Right? You said Mexico Beach obliterated. I mean, those people know that there's, you know, they're not going to be able to rebuild all of it. And so at some point you say, okay, we did all we can do. We can't prevent these storms. We can't stop them from happening, but we can do the best we can to educate ourselves on when they are going to occur and figure out what is our plan going to be.
I love to hear it, Gene. Thank you for doing what you've done all these decades to help keep people safe. As a send off, let's publicly put an end to the Wawa problem. What's the difference between watch and warning?
All right. So the watch means that something could happen. Whenever they put out a watch, that the National Weather Service will do it for a multiple number of counties. And they're saying, hey, in this area, which might be 10, 20, 30 counties, we anticipate that there will be some kind of severe weather occur. Okay. In the case of a tornado watch, we're saying we expect tornadoes to develop somewhere in this area. We still don't know. We can't say a pinpoint where, but we're saying in this area. Okay. Now, once the storms begin to develop and we actually have tornadoes that we can track, that's when we put out a warning. And I think that's a little bit unique about what we do, is our messaging gives them the safety action. Here's what you should do when you receive this message. And so we help people to learn more about what this threat means, because again, the Wawa is real. People get them confused all the time. I've heard people say, we're under a tornado watch, we got to get to shelter right now. No, you don't have to get to shelter right now. The tornado watch is usually 6 to 8 hours ahead of the actual event. But when the tornadoes are occurring right now, that's a warning. You need to take action right now. You need to get to someplace safe, the lowest floor of your home, an interior room, a closet, or a basement. And I know that the National Weather Service puts it in their wording for a tornado, get out of a mobile home. Well, if you can, yeah, try to find someplace else to get.
That's so, in other words, warning means basically run to safety.
Exactly.
Watch
Warning,
means just
action.
leave your TV on, keep your smartphone on, pay attention.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Pay attention, be aware. You know, that's your cue. Now, many people don't ever find out that they're under a watch, to be honest with you. So, you know, being able to provide that solution helps our clients know, hey, we need to do something. And we have clients who say, I got the watch notification, and they'll tell their residents, we're now opening up the shelter. So there are some proactive things that you can do when you get some of this messaging.
That's great to hear. And I literally had a conversation this morning with someone about drainage issues on mobile home parks, which tie back into flooding. So I have a couple mobile home parks in flood zones. And to me, what's really interesting about conducting due diligence, flood zones or no flood zones, are that if you have drainage issues, period, it's not that, oh, we're getting 2 inches of rain. It's like, no, like this is how water works. It goes to the lowest spot because gravity. So if you
Right.
don't have a good drainage system that is properly gravity fed, good culvert, stuff like that, in the event something massive happens that is once in a lifetime, if you will, if you don't have a good plan for your drainage, it's going to back up. And it may not, to a certain degree, matter if you're in a flood zone or not. You're going to have water damage, you're going to have wind damage. A lot of water means things like trees are going to fall down, because a tree that looks fine, that maybe doesn't have a strong grasp on the soil around it, you put enough water in it and all of a sudden that soil becomes really loose. So even if you're not under a watch or a warning or in a flood zone, a lot of precipitation with poor drainage and irrigation can result in some really, really bad things. So we don't ever talk
Exactly,
about,
because
we don't talk about
weather
water
doesn't
enough.
happen in a because weather doesn't happen in a vacuum, Ryan. I mean,
Right.
that's the thing. So if it's been raining for several days in a row, that can loosen the soil. We had that problem up in the Northeast recently with the Hurricane Henri. You may not know this, but July, they had one of their wettest Julys in the region. So the concern was, well, they might get 2 to 4 inches of rain. You go, well, that doesn't seem like a lot of rain, 2 to 4 inches of rain. It's not going to fall at one time. It's going to be spread out over a couple of days, but you already have saturated soils. You have swollen rivers. When you add the water, it runs off and it creates more problems. And a 30, 40 mile an hour wind gust could topple over a tree that in regular conditions might not have fallen over. But because the ground is loose from having a very wet month ahead of time, these are the conditions. So being aware, understanding what's happening, again, these are just things that, people need to just stay on top of.
Have a plan. Gene, thank you so much for joining. We're pumped for SECO, and thank you so much for giving us some of that wealth of knowledge that you've developed over the last several decades. It's really awesome what you do to help community owners and the residents too.
Absolutely. Well, my pleasure to be here, Ryan. I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to SECO. And if you're listening to this, please register. If you do it through Ryan's link, you get $25 off. So right there, that ought to incent you.
Come on out, folks. Gene, thanks again.
Okay, thank you.